People keep calling AI a tool, but I think that framing is too narrow and misses what may be a much bigger change. AI is everywhere right now. Companies are pouring jillions into it, lighting the planet on fire, and cramming it into every conceivable line of work. This isn't a discussion about how large language models work, nor is it a rant on how they were trained. It's some thoughts on what the future of the industry may look like and the potential human consequences. Your house may never catch fire, but you should definitely know what to do if it did. It might be good to set the stage a bit. A few years ago, circa 2022, AI kind of exploded into public consciousness with things like ChatGPT and Midjourney. At first, they were kind of a novelty. They could answer basic questions, write haikus, or draw deformed nonsense. Many of us wondered how long it would take for them to do anything useful. That was answered quickly, with newer models being pretty decent coding assistants, or generating six-fingered but otherwise realistic visuals. As we head into the 2025-2026 era, again, another large leap in capabilities, the rise of agentic coding, completing complex tasks on their own, and really convincing Will Smith spaghetti videos. This is kind of where we're at now. Now, there's a possibility that this is where it all ends, which is fine and dandy. It's nothing too crazy. They can arguably do the work of a caffeinated junior engineer who never sleeps, and senior engineers get a multiplier on their productivity. But overall, our problems don't keep growing. The scenario that's much more interesting to talk about is if their capabilities continue to grow, because that's where things change for us quite dramatically. Online, you'll hear arguments that there isn't much room to continue, though. We do hear people saying they fail on basic tasks, or they can't really reason. We've plateaued already with large language models, or they're not going to lead us to AGI. Let's unpack those general arguments. First off, let's address skepticism from programmers. I can find my own Discord quotes from last year saying the code they produce is garbage. I'm not above being wrong, though, and the more recent ones are actually showing some skill. I'm seeing industry veterans, people with 20-30 years of experience, both in private and publicly talking about how they're doing actual work. But anecdotes aren't facts, so let's look at their growth. It's probably safer to say that you can't just throw bigger models and datasets at them to continue growth. Some people have even cited papers that have shown that current AI systems have limits. But showing that something has a limit isn't the same thing as showing we're anywhere close to that limit or that progress has stopped. Progress often follows an S-curve, but from inside the curve, it's really tough to tell whether you're near the plateau or about to start that steep climb. This chart from METR, or Model Evaluation and Threat Research, this plots the task completion time horizons of frontier AI models, 50% completion rate. So this point here, it means that GPT 3.5 could handle a task that a human expert would take about 30 seconds on, and it managed it about 50% of the time, while GPT-4 could handle a task that would take a human expert about 4 minutes to do. From this, we can see that a few years ago, they could barely handle small tasks that would take a human expert a few seconds. It's important to note that this is a log-scale graph, so each advancement is actually a massive leap forward in capabilities. If we switch to linear, that becomes much more apparent. The state-of-the-art model, at least as of writing the script, is Claude 4.6, able to handle tasks autonomously that a human expert would be expected to take 12 hours to do. And unfortunately, friends have said that the internal ones are even stronger, even if you ignore the Mythos hype. Obviously an anecdote, but this idea that they're plateauing and can't do much, we can at least agree they're showing signs otherwise. If you don't like those benchmarks, there are others, SWE, Rebench, and Pro. We can bike shed all day, the point being that they're all improving. And this idea that they can't reason, well, there's some truth to that. They have trouble, as evidenced by this report from Stanford. But in that same graph, you're seeing massive improvement, model by model. So it might be time to revise your objection. The other argument is that LLMs won't lead to AGI. Yann LeCun has pressed this point pretty heavily, and it's not like I'm in any place to disprove him. Luckily, we don't actually need full AGI for these things to affect us greatly. Electric streetlights don't need full AGI or even the ability to reason to replace lamplighters. They just need to work. A narrow AI that can absorb many of the skilled tasks of a software engineer, not just drudge work, that's still a big problem. AGI will definitely amplify these issues, but we don't need it. So what happens in a situation where AI keeps getting better, as we're already seeing? So there's some early data already. Stanford's Canaries in the Coal Mine shows pressure on the entry level already, as does Signal Fire's State of Tech Talent report. It's not cut and dried. There's other things going on, but there's a trend here. So jobs haven't fallen off a cliff, but the early data is a bit unsettling. Right now, you could arguably say that, at least for many developers, Claude or Codex can probably do the job of an intern or very junior engineer. That is, they can fix a lot of small bugs, even plan and execute smaller features, but many things aren't going to be quite perfect. You'll need someone with experience to guide architecture decisions, that sort of thing. What does this mean? It means that if a senior plus AI covers enough, then companies have fewer incentives to hire junior programmers, which we're already seeing happening. If you imagine a ladder where each rung represents your experience and sort of place in an organization, the lower rungs being the entry-level positions, and as you get higher up, you get senior positions, managers, etc., then AI may set a new floor, and anything below this level may get seen as not worth keeping from a financial standpoint. Grabbing small bugs, having seniors comment and guide, that's often how juniors turn into seniors. If you disrupt that model by replacing a lot of them with seniors plus AI tooling, you need to find a new way to build expertise. It doesn't disappear overnight, but it sure as hell is hard to find a COBOL expert these days. If you're wondering, is this likely to happen? How many times have you been saddled with more responsibility with no pay raise? Companies often want more output with fewer people. AI is fun and allows us to build potentially bigger things with fewer people. That is literally the sales pitch. In the context of game developers, the fantasy is that it'll allow us to go at it alone, with AI filling in the role of other devs. Have a game idea but can't draw? AI has you covered. So just learn the tools, right? You adopt the tools and workflows, offloading work to AI and seeing your productivity climb. Win-win, eh? If an AI can say 5x your productivity, well, you as an individual, you're special. But collectively, you're not really all that special. Everyone has access to Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, so presumably your competition can also buy a subscription. And so that 5x productivity just becomes the norm. So unless you get 5x salary or vacation or something, consumers or your employer may appreciate it, but you as a worker don't benefit as much. I'm not trying to be anti-tool here or downplay the fact that some of these gains can legitimately get rid of frustrating problems. I'm just helping you realize that this just gets normalized and you're left with higher expectations. So with fewer entry-level positions and higher expectations, what does that mean? Are we all just going to be code orchestrators or AI babysitters or whatever you want to call the new role? At least that seems to be the prevailing argument. You still have to guide the AI, make architectural decisions, that sort of thing. This is just a tool switch, a shovel for an excavator. We'll be able to build bigger and grander now. I'd say that this is a bit of a false equivalence. In this example, we replaced a small portion of construction, the dirt removal part, with a machine. A machine still operated by human beings, making all the decisions about where, what, how. Maybe a more apt comparison would be to replace that shovel with some sort of mechanized home building machine, one that excavates and pours a foundation. V2 lets it also frame the house, and the manufacturer promises newer ones will drywall, install the plumbing and electrics, and eventually even paint the walls. I don't see this as a simple tool swap though. A tool swap is straightforward. Old tool out, new powerful one in. Job stays the same, but wow, you can do much more. In our case, the whole process of making software changes. It's becoming increasingly automated from end to end. We aren't seeing the birth of a new tool. That speaks to more of an industrialization of software, which is a different kind of change entirely. So what happens when something is industrialized? You obviously can't say for sure, but you can look at history for guidance. Let's look at this shoes example. What happened there was that shoe production shifted from handcrafted methods to mass production, driven by various inventions and pushed into factories. Obviously, consumers benefited greatly from this. You get standardization, reduced costs, more accessible footwear. So the craft didn't die out entirely. Shoemakers still exist, just nowhere near as many. Even if they produce a higher quality shoe, often people settle on good enough and affordable. It's probably safe to say that much fewer people own a pair of handmade shoes these days. For software, obviously the ideal would be that these new roles, you get a 1-to-1 ratio of coders, artists, whatever, to these new roles. But is that realistic? If one person can suddenly output more, yes, there's the possibility that companies will keep similar headcount and provide more services. Or another possibility is they'll attempt to reduce headcount, possibly while still trying to provide more. This is literally what Geoffrey Hinton, a guy called one of the godfathers of AI, this is what he's warning of. I mean, this is already happening in many places. If we look at recent news, looks like companies are already interested in trying to reduce headcount. If that continues, then it's a lot easier to imagine companies running with fewer people rather than more. If we're going to go with less people, that implies then that there's limited orchestrator roles, right? You're left fighting for one of these roles. If we go back to our nice little ladder from earlier and AI is gobbling up these lower rungs, then this fight isn't between everyone. This fight is disproportionately between people higher on the ladder. More senior engineers implicitly hold an advantage here. It may mean that those higher up disproportionately benefit from this. Awesome if you think you'll be a winner, and not so awesome otherwise. The question is, are you safe? It's easy to be optimistic about these changes when you're so insulated from the potential negative outcomes, like people like Tim and Carmack are. Personally, to me, everyone who's currently hyped about AI may be imagining themselves as part of that winner circle, and I'd be careful thinking that. The idea that it's just low-level work going, well, graphics always felt like one of those safer niches to me. High floor and the field moves fast. The job is complex math and code, but also applying it in coordination with art and production constraints. Then we have NVIDIA with their GPT moment for graphics. Specialists aren't suddenly obsolete, but now it presents a plausible future around not needing them. Never quite know if the floor is going to drop out from under you. If we go back to the shovel analogy, well, a shovel is one tool of literally hundreds that construction workers use. The guy who could dig and only dig, he was totally replaced by the machine. That's fine if it took him 20 minutes to learn to use a hammer later, but not fine if he has a 4-year bachelor's degree in shovels, is middle-aged with a mortgage and family obligations, and no flexibility to just go back and learn to hammer. So rate of change is kind of important here, how fast we're moving towards this future. If it takes 30 years to phase out these fields in favor of AI automation, that's probably fine. Careers have time to play out, people can retrain. But the capability graph really doesn't look gradual, and the market is already reacting. GDC's State of the Industry survey says 28% of devs were laid off in the last 2 years, more in the US. AI isn't solely to blame, but it does show you that things are happening. Shoemaking took about 40 to 50 years to transition from handcrafted to mechanized, while newspapers took a huge hit between 2008 and 2020, and travel agents collapsed in about 10. AI adoption and capability is rising quickly, so the longer timeline may be wishful thinking. Luckily, we all get our news from TikTok now, so obviously things worked out great. And realistically, I've worked with a lot of people over the years. Not everyone is cut out to be one of these code orchestrators. People have different strengths. Some are fantastic at digging deep into problems, while others are great at knowing the whole code base. They've already found their place, and this is kind of a new role. So yeah, we could just say, learn the tools and adapt. Some people will be well suited and others won't be. That's life. It's not a condemnation of progress, just a reminder that some people may be left behind through no fault of their own. But suppose we resign ourselves to this future. What does it look like? Often the sales pitch is that AI is leveling the playing field. It's the democratization of creation, where it'll allow everyone who had ideas but no way to, realize them, to suddenly see their ideas come to life. I'm not really convinced that's the case though, or at least we'll get some monkey's paw version. Being able to access a service isn't the same as owning it. If you're still depending on a handful of providers for the models, hosting, etc., then you could end up more reliant on them than ever. And there aren't that many providers today. We've seen this enshittification pattern from tech companies before. Awesome at first, become super dependent, lock you in, milk you dry. Anybody remember Google before it was just a page of ads? In an AI development-driven world, yeah, you can develop faster, but so can the bigger guy with more resources, probably faster than you, which makes this sort of problem possible. Like, hey, your game was kind of fun, let's make an Amazon Basics version of that. It's not like they don't do that already. So maybe creation is easier for you, and even easier for whoever has the most resources. What happens then? It's likely that a few lucky people will be enabled to make games and succeed where they once couldn't, and that's awesome. Conversely, some existing developers may see less success as their technical or artistic moats get eaten away by AI. But besides that, I can make a TV show right now and put it online, and nobody will watch it because how the hell are they going to find it? So I put it on YouTube, and I'm completely at the mercy of YouTube's algorithm, but at least I might get seen. That is to say, yeah, if we're all making games, then there's this endless sea of content to sift through, and curation of those games becomes more important than ever. Getting hosted and featured by Netflix, Amazon, Steam, whoever, that becomes an even bigger deal than ever. If AI is democratizing creation, that doesn't magically level the playing field, just means that we flood the internet with more content and someone has to sift through it all. Just because you can make stuff faster, that doesn't mean anyone's going to look at it. More supply doesn't mean there's anywhere for it to go. Maybe the market will grow to accommodate it. Sure, maybe. This is what people like Carmack and Kieran are hoping for, that it opens up some whole new industry or way of doing things, and demand expands to meet it. But for that to save you, they'd have to appear pretty fast, and we'd have to hope that they're actually beneficial for us. You can't really predict these kind of things, you can just wish really, really hard. So while it's possible, it's relying pretty heavily on hope. A couple things to consider here. First off, attention is finite. If we're limiting ourselves to talking about games, movies, music, that kind of stuff, they're all competing for the same hours of your day. That in itself doesn't stop the market from growing, but it does mean that each person has a limit to how much media they can consume. But if we want to zoom out and talk bigger picture here, yes, it's possible that the market grows while individual developers still lose out. The state of the industry from GDC shows that fully 1/3 of US developers have been laid off in the last 2 years, in an industry that's more profitable than ever, and getting into it is harder too, with fewer entry-level jobs and AI-led displacement. There are similar reports on the wider software industry as well. My main point here being, these ideas can coexist. They're not mutually exclusive. One easy scenario is we all keep our jobs, but we're left competing with some dude who got a short course in Claude Code. Maybe that worker is now close enough, not better mind you, but close enough that you can't command much of a premium for your skill anymore. That's a problem, not for companies, but for you, because, food, mortgage, that stuff. But hey, if we concede, yeah, okay, maybe the market grows. Let's run with that, fine. You'll become one of these AI orchestrator people. I guess my next question is, do I want this job? Speaking from a programmer standpoint, and artists or musicians or whoever else can chime in with theirs, but the part I enjoy the most is finding a way to build a thing, problem solving, debugging, shaping the code very directly. In the past, even fighting with the compiler to do some template metaprogramming was neat and fun. As people are already seeing, prompting and steering AIs is something different, and for a lot of people, this isn't what they signed up for. The optimistic way of looking at it is to say, well, it'll reduce the drudge work, leave us time to focus on the important things. Problem is the leftover work is actually worse. Studies show they intensify work rather than reduce it. Problem is they don't really reduce your workload unless you literally get to take time off because of the time they saved you. At Google, the absolute worst part of the job was writing docs and reviewing code. I hated it, and nearly everyone in my circle did as well. I'm sure some people love it, but let's not discuss those animals. Managing these AI agents, the worst part of my job, is now the job. Uber reviewers are already overloaded by the volumes of AI-assisted code. Sonar Source describes a new bottleneck on verification, and this post from the .NET team using Copilot coding agent says one person can easily saturate a team with pull requests. So we're stuck reviewing the steaming piles of code that AI is generating. And weirdly, as we do that, we get worse at it. And more than that, if AI is writing more code than I would have, and maybe more than I can realistically understand in detail, depending on how big that system gets, eventually it may just be a black box where I roughly know the inputs and outputs. What exactly is my role at that point? Is my job just signing off on this black box of AI-written code in case something goes wrong? It starts getting weird as you follow this line of thought through further down the line. It's entirely possible to be excited about the possibility AI unlocks while acknowledging that some people's lives are going to be severely disrupted by it. Both things can be true. Advanced autocomplete is one thing, but agentic coding, implementing things autonomously is another. That leans way more heavily into a brand new way of doing things. I'm not saying that this is the only way that things can end up, but things are certainly trending in a direction that's worrying. We're not at the point where you can trust AI to just write code and it'll work, but maybe that's the perfect time to discuss what will happen if and when we do cross that line. It's better to get out ahead of a problem than be left trying to deal with one as it happens. I have to admit, the idea of just telling an AI, yeah, make me a few more seasons of The Simpsons before it got terrible, or make me a Mass Effect sequel that doesn't suck, is neat to think about. But AI has been on a lot of people's minds, and for good reason. This does look like more than just a tool change. I've had over 20 years of industry experience, and honestly, I'm a bit unsure about my place in the world of agentic coding. And I'm probably in a decent position with a reasonable amount of experience and technical ability already built. In the near term, it's crazy how fast I can build things with agentic coding, while I just kind of tell it the architecture, what the API surface should look like, where to refactor, etc. Further out than that, I have no idea. It's all fun and games until the floor reaches you. It's definitely not the job I studied for, or really the job I want either. Cheers.